participants already. Are you ready to start, Joseph and Bon?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, that's
Morning,
good.
everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Halos, and I will be your moderator today. Welcome to our live webinar titled What Librarians Should Know About Authentication. We are live in Zoom. Also, we would like everyone to know that our webinar is being recorded. Let us start this event and pause for a while for our opening prayer, followed by the Philippine National Anthem. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear Father, we offer everything and thank you for everyone gathered here today to walk with you. May we ask you for your blessing and guidance so that the activity set for this undertaking be successful. We ask you to open our eyes to see the wonderful things from this activity. We ask that you open our ears so that we may retain the invaluable knowledge. Open our minds for us to think wisely. Put us with understanding, cooperation, and peace in fulfilling our responsibilities. Open our hearts so that we may receive your everlasting love. And open our spirit so that we may know that you are with us all throughout the day. We ask all these in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, telos ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na naghihingi, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang may di magdidinig, luman ang araw ng walhagis pagsinta, buhay ang langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pagkay mga amin, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Mga kababayan,
Okay, so we have a lot of participants. We can see from the Zoom, it's growing by the second. We are now 600 exactly. And we would like to know from which of the different major island groups you are from, whether you are from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We have a poll. Bon, is our poll ready so that we know where our participants are coming from? Let's see.
Yes, the
Please
poll is up.
answer. Okay, please answer the poll so that we can see if you are from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, or if you are from the National Capital Region, or maybe we have some participants who are from different parts of the globe, international. Oh, see, we have from Indonesia. Did you see? Please answer the poll. We have a poll on screen. If you can see it, kindly check which island you are from. Okay. Can we see the final result, Bon?
I think we are, many are still answering. We are
Ah.
on 430 participants still answering. So maybe we'll just give like 30 seconds to a minute because we are 600 in Zoom. So many are still answering. Still.
Oh, okay. So we can see the different places they're from, also from the chat box. They say they are from Mindanao. Oh, somebody saying hi to me. Hello, ma'am, from Davao City. That is where my father is from. Hello. Okay. So, Bon, the reason why we're asking, aside from knowing which part of the Philippines they are from, we also want to see, we've been seeing good morning. Our guests and panelists, I know you can see in the chat that they are saying good morning to us. This time, we would like you to type or say good morning in your own dialect. In your own dialect. Ayan, the poll is ready. So we have 41% from Luzon. So yung mga taga Luzon, magandang umaga. Visayas, ayan, we can see maayong buntag, marahay. Na-research ko yon. Yung marahay na aga, that is from Bicol. Am I correct? Ayan, so it's so nice. Also, we have a lot from Visayas, 14%, Mindanao equal, 14%, NCR, 29%, international, at least my international, we have 1%. Okay, so we have been also seeing your good morning greeting. You know, it's so nice to see all your warm greetings this morning before we start the webinar. Now it's time to proceed with our webinar guidelines. Are you ready with the webinar guidelines? Bon, let's read it. And daming greetings. Good morning to all of you. Okay, for our webinar guidelines, all the participants' audio and videos are turned off by default. If you have questions on the topic, please type it on the designated Q&A box found at the lower right-hand side of your screen. It is best to use the Q&A so that we can monitor your questions. Questions will be read at the end of the presentation. This will ensure a smooth flow and to not interrupt the speaker. E-certificates will be provided for participants who have registered, attended, and answered our brief survey after this webinar. If there is no survey, there is no e-certificate. Please wait a minimum of 2 weeks before receiving your certificates via email. We will be having a fun game with prizes at the end of the webinar, so stay with us until the very end. Have your mobile devices handy to register and join. And last, the most important, sit back, listen, and have a fun learning experience with us. Okay, so now our topic is very timely. We read and hear a lot of stories about concerns on security, privacy, and data breach. For our libraries, we should all be aware of a safe, secure, simple, and reliable ways of authentication methods for accessing our online resources. Our speakers today are ready to share their knowledge to all of us here. Let me introduce them. We are honored to have 3 speakers today, or actually 1 major speaker with 2 panelists as well, also from our headquarters. Let me start by introducing our main speaker, Mr. Jeff Arsenault. Jeff recently celebrated his 10th year at EBSCO, having spent 5 of those working with Western Canadian academic institutions and libraries to provide databases, monographs, and software. And the most recent 5 years working with Authentication, including Open Athens, a valued EBSCO partner for over 15 years. When not helping customers and colleagues, Jeff enjoys cooking, gardening, and anything that involves outdoors with his 2 dogs. Also, we have William Elwell as our panelist. If you have questions later, William and our other speaker, Larry, will be helping us. William has been with EBSCO for more than 5 years. He held diverse roles, being a part of the customer support team, implementation team, and now as a technical specialist for authentication with a worldwide sales team. William's technical expertise configuring access to hundreds of service providers for thousands of customers makes him an integral part of ensuring both administrators and the end users are able to access the content they need promptly and efficiently from anywhere in the world. William lives about 20 miles from EBSCO's headquarters in Ipswich, Massachusetts, in a town called Rockport, which is famous for its great views and great lobster. Wow. His interests include nature, technology, and philosophy. And last, but certainly not the least, I'd like to introduce Mr. Larry Mccondel. Larry has worked with EBSCO for 5 years, initially working with North American colleges and universities, and moving to research workflows in 2020. In 2021, Larry started in global authentication sales for all markets. And in this role, he has been able to combine his 16 years experience in software sales with his knowledge of the research and academic communities to help institutions of all sizes and disciplines find their ideal authentication solutions. In his spare time, Larry enjoys golf, travel, and cooking, although not necessarily in that order, but depending on the season. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Jeff, William, and Larry. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Cher. Thank you very much for that introduction. That was, I just have to say, this probably is the highest production quality of any webinar that I've ever been on or attended. So credits to you, Joseph and Bond, for putting that together. It's quite impressive. And I think given the number of attendees we have, I think everyone can appreciate that. One of the I don't know how many of you were here, but Bond was playing some videos of our offices that are in Massachusetts in the United States, and a number of interviews with colleagues, and it got me reflecting that it's been some years, plural, that I've seen many of those colleagues in person, and I think it's relevant, and also seeing the islands that comprise the Philippines, all of that made me think how important that remote authentication has been proven to us over the course of the last few years with the pandemic, and all of us getting out of our standard routines and having to rely more and more on connectivity and proper access to everything that we do to conduct our daily lives, whether that's research or whether that is work or just anything that we do that are our hobbies. So it really all hit home with those montages, and I wonder if it did for all of you as well. But what we're looking to accomplish today. And let me see if I can, Bond, do I have the ability to share my screen? Let's just see. Yep, I do. So I
Yes.
will do that now. I didn't before. Okay, so can everyone see the
Yes, we can see your
title
screen,
page
Jeff.
there? Great.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, so that really struck me as a poignant example, if you will, of the journey that this is a much longer journey over the course of many decades where we've gotten to here in terms of authentication, and we'll cover some of that. But really over the last few years, it's been quite a stark contrast. Remote access to the tools we need to be successful and live our daily lives has come into very sharp focus over those years, and I think all of us can really speak to that. So as we go through the presentation here, I just ask everyone to be mindful of that perspective put into place, how we got here, and think about some of the work that's been put in by many different people and institutions to make access really simple and intuitive for patrons. It's not an easy task to coordinate all of this and have these worldwide standards, but there are many people that are doing service largely unheralded to make it so that we can communicate just like this, and also access all the things that we need to be successful on a daily basis. So the format of this hour, really, or this session, because it could be a little bit more than an hour. I think we have 2 hours booked in, is going to be just as Cher communicated earlier, some education. We'll talk about the history of authentication in general. Authentication is a pretty dense subject and can get quite technical. I'm not going to do that in the course of this conversation. We can always do that for any of you that want to go as proprietary or in depth with your particular systems, and you can communicate with our colleagues, Cher, Bond, and Joseph. Will be happy to set up one-on-one conversations for that. But we will try to talk about and give you some perspective of how the systems that we use on a daily basis evolved, why we use what we use, and why further evolutions are coming about, and try to put that all into perspective so you can understand the modern landscape of authentication today. It would be wonderful if everything was free and open and easy to access, and it certainly would be simpler for all of us. But again, there are content that, for many reasons, should be accessible only by those who have subscriptions or have a need to know or what have you. And then there are the tools that we use to get to those resources. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the actual protocols that underpin all of these services that we use on a daily basis. I think all of us can relate. It's not just research, it's not just academia or whatever industries you're in. Everything we do these days, I know that we're going to have a poll later on, or we're going to have the contest on your mobile devices. We all live off of certain devices, whether they be laptops, desktops, phones, or anything else that we have, and we all conduct our daily business. That might be personal business, banking, or paying your bills, or could be registering for classes, or anything else that we do. All of that relies on some of the same principles that we're going to be talking about today in the framework of research, but it is a lot more universal. So think about that as well, how all of this applies to everything we do. There is a balance, as you can see here, between ease of access and security. Sometimes, in that banking example I just gave, you don't want everyone to know, you don't want anyone really to know but you, personal information, but information is required to route you to your particular accounts or wherever you might need to have access to. So that security and the ease of getting in there is something that we've probably all encountered both sides of. Sometimes it's frustrating, we can't get what we want, or it's difficult. And sometimes, wow, that was really easy. They made a difficult task quite simple for me, and that should register. That's always the goal with authentication and the tools that have been created here. And we're in a dynamic environment, software, the internet, things change quite rapidly, and the technology has to keep pace with that. And if you're like any of us, we're all human, change isn't the easiest thing to adapt to, but oftentimes once we get through that adjustment, it's a whole new paradigm, and we don't know how we could live without some of this technology. So that's the context, and everyone's particular instances are different. All of your conditions are different. All of your institutions are different, larger, smaller, more technical, less technical. You might have many different tools. Some of you have fewer, and all of that plays into how we can work with authentication to make it easier to get to where you need to go. So again, as I mentioned before, we interface with what we call authentication, or just basically, proving you are who you are, and you should have access to where you want to go all the time. It's not just in research, but this is going to be a little bit more focused on the research world, libraries. But those libraries can cover a lot of ground: scholarly, medical, health and government, corporate libraries. Corporations do tons of research, obviously, and so everyone needs access in a different manner. There are tools out there, like we talked about, that are legacy tools. There has to be connectivity. You can't just move on from one means of access to another without a transition. We're currently in a transition, and we'll talk about some of that between protocols right now. And then, of course, there's the whole cost element. Change isn't just disruptive. It can often have costs associated with that, and you have to budget that or make that transition gradual, so you can adjust to things like different costs. So we'll talk about all of that. But again, just if you think about all those elements as we go through the presentation here, I think that will help place all of this into the proper context. So we do have a couple of polls for you. We've reached the first one here because we're going to talk about said protocols shortly. So generally, we started to, once the world became connected electronically, right? Think the internet or its predecessors, we started to have to need ways to both network, be able to talk to those different folks that are on what we now know as the internet. It wasn't always anywhere near as easy to access as it is now, but we also needed gateways to say, hey, you have some affiliation with this group, and keep others out who didn't. So it wasn't just the wide open. So one of the very first protocols that, and still in place today, we all use it a great deal, is called IP, or Internet Protocol. When does everybody think that that was introduced to the world to start being able to be a protocol for one network or one computer to talk to others out there using what's now known as the internet? And if you want to place your answers in there, we'll wait till we get some quorum, and then we'll move on. It's the internet is a little bit older than we might think, but if we put all this in context compared to the history of the world, pretty new in terms of all of our experience. Great. So Cher, do you want me to read through the results? Is that how we want to do these? I don't think we talked about that. I'm happy to.
Yes, okay, please go ahead.
We have it's pretty even. We have about a 33% say 1963. That's a pretty good guess. It's right about the time that we started that computers started to be less than the size of, say, a room. We have some for 1982 as well. Very fewer for 1959. But the winner, or actually the winner was 1963, but the actual answer is 1974. Very close. So yeah, it's kind of nebulous. As you can see, there are a lot of close answers in there. What happened in 1974 was that a couple of gentlemen who were working on ARPANET, Vint Cerf was the main proponent of it, but created a protocol, right? ARPANET was the United States Defense Department's internal network. And at that point, really it was only government entities that could afford or even host a computer. They were gigantic. And then they started to have to talk to each other. It was the very first networks, I think, had about 50 different machines talking. And at that point, that seemed like a large number. It's laughable, but today, I mean, we might have I don't even know, thousands of devices connecting right here just for this one event. But that was the extent of it. They created a protocol called Transfer Control Protocol, which was the predecessor of IP, Internet Protocol, which basically allowed one computer to talk to another by understanding, hey, where are you connecting to the internet from? If you think about it like your home has an address, so you can tell people how to find you or get packages or mail there. That's essentially the same thing. Where are these connectors? Where are these computers connecting to the internet from? And that was in 1974. Not a short time ago, but certainly not a long time ago. I was around just barely, but since then, there have been some marked changes and evolutions in how we connect. In 1983, that group, ARPANET itself, and the United States Defense Department really officially adopted Internet Protocol, or IP, to be that language to connect their machines. By this time, it had started to proliferate a little bit more, and we're talking thousands of machines. And when I went to college, I didn't have email. We didn't communicate that way. Things were written. You could go to the computer lab and type out your papers on a computer, but you either had to print them right there and bring that printed copy with you, or you really didn't have a way to send that anywhere. That changed rapidly. By the time 1999, the change of the century rolled around, we had email. Everyone was on these devices. It was the formative years of mobile devices and phones and things of that nature. That's around the time when in Arizona, it was actually in the United States, there was a public library network, and a systems librarian there created the tool that we now call Easy Proxy to allow for patrons who weren't physically in the library. That was another requirement. In order to use IP, you had to be at your computer, or you'd be outside of that IP range, right? So that range gets registered with the vendor or whomever is providing you with your content or whatever you want to access. And so in order to do that, if you had your IP range registered with that vendor or publisher, you had to be in that range. If you walked out of your house, you were no longer in that range and you wouldn't be able to connect. That's what Easy Proxy set out to solve and did. What it essentially does, as we'll go through the processes in just a few slides here, is allow you to really be anywhere. The software, the server, the product itself rewrites that and makes it appear as though you're coming from somewhere else. The publisher thinks you might be in your home, but you could be anywhere in the world because you're routing through that different server that's giving that publisher the IP address that you've registered. And there'll be some diagrams that'll show us exactly how that happens. It's pretty simple, but what it does is pretty magical, I think, in terms of being able to free you to go anywhere that you want to go. In 2003, as the internet started to get more complex, e-commerce, information that was beyond just where are you, we needed to start protecting information. There's personal stuff on there, and so SAML was created, an even more granular protocol that allows you to send more information. This is who I am, this is where I am, this is the institution I'm affiliated with. That kind of information needed protection. So the developers of SAML, which stands for Security Assertion Markup Language, it's all kinds of acronyms in the authentication world, said we're going to allow this information to go across the open web, which there's all kinds of bad actors out there, people who might want to get your personal information, but we're going to send it across there, but we're going to encrypt it. So we're going to make it impossible for anyone to just kind of snoop in and say, oh, I can see all this traffic, I can see everything that's going on, I can extract this data. And to this day, SAML still remains that protocol. It has not been compromised or hacked. And in that time, as we'll talk about, we've built around that protocol what are called federations. Federations make it really easy to share information. That's why they exist, to make all of this easier, because as you could imagine, connecting all these different individuals and institutions with all that information and routing that and protecting it to the places it needs to go and return from is complex. And SAML does a really good job of that, and federations do a really good job of making the complex simpler. It's a work in progress, and it always will be, but again, that's why they exist, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. In 2014, a pretty recent in this timeline, another lighter weight protocol emerged. It's called OpenID Connect. It's the identity protocol on another protocol called OAuth, which is an identity and access protocol as well. Gets a little bit complex to talk about all of the protocols there. But what OIDC or OpenID Connect does is it does the same thing as SAML, protects your information, makes it simpler to connect, but it's lighter weight for developers to work with. So it's really easy to make those connections. Not that SAML is difficult. As things iterate, it just and more and lighter weight and easier products become available, then we want to adopt those. OpenID Connect doesn't have the federated aspect built around it yet. It's relatively new, but it is easier to work with. So we do integrate it with many systems that are concerned with what we call single sign-on. So IP proxy has been around, as you can see there, for roughly 25 odd years, maybe a little bit more. And it's quite simple. You can see the devices there on the left-hand side of the diagram. Anywhere we all are, we're connecting to the internet from wherever we are. That has a distinct, what we call address. And that tells whomever we're connecting to, this is where this person's connected to the internet from. And you can register this information right here with a vendor, with anyone that you need to connect to, and they can authorize, or what's called whitelisting, that address. So if you want to access anything that you should rightfully have access to, and you've made those arrangements with a vendor beforehand, they'll look at this and say, okay, it's coming in from yep, we can see that, or more accurately, their systems evaluate that and say, yep, you're listed, in you go. But again, as soon as you step away outside your house here and you're no longer in this, or you step outside the library, you're no longer within this range, you try to access and it'll say, oh, that's a different IP. We don't have that registered, and sorry, we can't let you in. That's where IP proxy comes in. You essentially route through this, right? And this is done through linking. As many of you are probably familiar with, these are all done with formatted URLs. It has this information, but it goes through your proxy server and takes that distinct IP address and it changes it to one that is definitely registered with your service provider. So frees you up from having to be in a certain place, and now you can route through that proxy server. And this is usually maintained by your library or your IT department or your institution, and that gets you through to the content that you need, freeing you up from that geographic requirement, right? One of the limitations of IP is that it doesn't have the ability to carry any further information than that. It's just essentially saying, yeah, you're within this range. We don't know who you are. We don't know how many of you there are. We don't know how many times you're accessing. This is or 100 accesses, if that's 100 people accessing once, or whether that's one person accessing 100 times. It just shows you're getting pinged from this address here that many times. So at the time that IP was conceived, access was the problem. Security wasn't really an issue. We just needed to communicate to the different machines and transmit the different information that we required. Really convenient. Anonymity is another aspect of what IP does really well. For those reasons I just mentioned, you don't know who the individuals are. You just know that they fit in the prearranged criteria and should have access to those resources. That can be good. It still can be good. Anonymity is still a very important aspect of what certain libraries do. Public libraries, for example, that is one of their guiding principles. Different types of libraries, academic, certainly health and corporate. It's pretty important to know who the patrons are, because that can guide patrons to the different types of content or that's applicable to them or whatnot. And we'll get more in depth in what those how we can manage those processes with single sign-on as we go forward. But nothing's encrypted. It doesn't have to be. IP and IP proxy don't transmit any kind of information that you would necessarily need to protect. And again, patrons could be anywhere in the world if you're routing through a proxy server, as long as you have that registered with your service providers or your content providers. So in that way, authentication, there's nothing really being authenticated there, because as you'll see, in the world of computing, authentication really means, the definition is to have one's identity verified. IP is not doing that. That's why at Open Athens and at EBSCO, we term that IP recognition. We recognize, yes, this is information we've exchanged, and yes, this is you are within that range, and you're authorized to access these content or tools or whatever. But again, there's no more information than that. There can't be. It's just a limitation of that protocol. But it's also a positive, as we talked about with anonymity. So there are any protocol that we're talking about, there will be benefits, there will be drawbacks, and all of this depends on the context of your institution. Some of these you may think are positives that others might think is, oh, that's inconvenient, or might not be appealing to us. But certainly anonymity is a strength of IP. Ease of use. If you think about just traditional IP, where you don't ever have to enter a credential or anything, because you are in that range, you are in that physical location, that's easy. Great. We all want easy. But as if you remember going back, there's a balance between ease of use and security. You don't have to, there's no identity verification, there's no credentials that patrons have to enter. If we're talking about traditional IP, that changes with proxy. You do have to be a member of an institution, as we'll talk about. It's flexible for identity providers, but that can also be a negative as well. Many sites, if you're registering IPs, you might get new ones or different ones, really, because IP as we know it, IPv4 is the protocol. There are two protocols. About 10 years ago, we ran out of IPv4 addresses. So now we're on to a new protocol, which is different, larger, more variables, called IPv6. But one of the detriments of IP is that if you get new IPs, for example, it's a good discipline, and some institutions do it, contact all of your vendors and say, hey, we no longer have this IP associated with our institution. These are the new ones that we have, or what have you. If you don't do that, then vendors are probably just keeping that in there, and someone else may be accessing content. And when the vendor thinks it's your institution, it might be another one, or vice versa. We've actually run into scenarios like that, where we go to register an IP with a vendor on behalf of Open Athens, or since we're EBSCO, we register IPs, and we say, wait a minute, you're institution A, and this is already registered here under a different institution that's across the world. How do we square this? And what happens was the last institution to have that identical IP just never let us know that, hey, this is no longer ours, and through that discipline didn't remove it. It generally gets caught, but that would be one of the detriments to IP. It's a little bit looser of a protocol. It's not a one-to-one correlation necessarily with your institution. And that ambiguity of IP can be a positive. It can also be a negative. There's no way to get any more granular. You don't necessarily know exactly who your users are with IP. You can get to know that with a proxy, who those are, and we'll get into that in just a bit. But there is some, as we get into proxy, there is some expertise required in how to manage that. As mentioned, you have to know, and any of you that utilize an IP proxy tool like Easy Proxy or Remote Access or anything like that, know that your links are formatted. There's probably one or more folks at your institutions who do that, format those links, because it's really important. If those are not the proper syntax, then your links will be broken. Patrons can't get where they need to go. So there is some technical expertise required there in order to manage IP proxy. Oftentimes, because it's such a loose group, there isn't a lot of granularity. You don't have great analytics. You can build that into Proxy, and as some of you might know, you do have systems that have that. But if you don't, then there is no granularity. Everyone goes into the same bucket, the same IP address or the same IP proxy address. And again, it's designed for access as opposed to authentication, which, if we remember back to the definition, is basically proving your identity. So there are a number of different tools that perform both single sign-on and proxy out there. We're going to transition now into some of the single sign-on tools and show you what those do and how that differs from proxy. But if you see on the slide here, many of you either use these tools currently, have used them in the past, or maybe looking at them to utilize and deploy in the future. You might notice that in the middle of this screen, there is Open Athens kind of straddles that line between SAML-based single sign-on and IP proxy access. And the reason for that is Open Athens is a tool that has both protocols available. One of the facts of authentication out there today is that not every service provider or vendor supports SAML, right? It requires some expertise and maybe some cost involved, or any number of reasons. Most support IP proxy, but not all. And so Open Athens has both services. It's really the only authentication provider that we know that supports both of those in the same product, in the same interface. You may know of another one, but it's a kind of an either or thing, which makes it nice. You have your best of both worlds there. But again, there are many tools that are out there. Shibboleth is an open source SAML-based access tool that you can utilize. We're all familiar with Microsoft. They have a cloud-based single sign-on application. And then Okta is a newer, again, easy to use. And then many of you are probably using either Easy Proxy from OCLC or a product called Remote Access, which also is a proxy tool. And these are fairly useful in that they have an interface or an access point, and some have analytics. You can build your own analytics around many of these tools as well. But again, that requires some expertise. So how SAML single sign-on functions is basically a trusted relationship between what we call the identity provider, right? You, your directory, your database of all the patrons that have that are affiliated with your institution, and what we call the service provider or the vendor, publisher. There's a lot of different ways to refer to that, but really service provider is what we use as a universal term. And so as you can see here, then the end user, your patrons. Your patron, say in a typical single sign-on session, your patron wants to go and access anything they need to do research. Let's call it the Science Direct platform from Elsevier. End user would probably go to your access points, whether you have a discovery tool, or you use a product like LibGuides, or a learning management system that has reading lists with these links in there. Your catalog, right, has these links in the 856 field of your MARC records or your BibFrame records. And so the end user clicks on that link, and right away, right, that sends a request to that's Science Direct. Science Direct goes, I don't see that you've logged in. Science Direct, through that link, goes to what we call the identity provider, your database, and says, Jane Smith is looking to access this journal article on our platform. Is Jane Smith a member of your institution? Yes. Have you provided her with access to this resource? Yes. Okay, Jane, here you go. And if that didn't, and this all happens in under a second, in microseconds. If Jane didn't have access, or for whatever reason wasn't a member of this institution, then the identity provider is going to say, I don't recognize that, or yeah, Jane is a member of our institution. However, we haven't provided her with access to that resource. And then Jane will get a message, hey, you may want to contact your administrator. It doesn't seem like you've been provided access here. We know you're a member. And that's the granularity that single sign-on can provide you. That's something that IP really couldn't do. It can't differentiate Jane from anyone else at their institution. So we get asked frequently, well, wait a minute, that's how, there's a lot of personal information potentially. Is that a liability? The way that SAML works and the way that it works for each one of these service providers is that you'd get what's called a targeted ID. That's a shibboleth term. And a targeted ID is essentially, it's a 22 character string, alphanumeric. It's, to look at it, it wouldn't be identifiable to you or anyone. That's the idea, but it's unique amongst your institution and the patrons at your institution. So it can tell that, hey, Jane Smith is different from any of these other patrons, and it can make and remember that affiliation. So when it sees that string of characters again, it knows that this is Jane. Jane may, or the institution on her behalf, may want to send over things like first name, last name, email, to make the user experience a little friendlier. Hey, Jane, welcome back to Science Direct. Here's your folder. Here are the things that you favorited. Here's your history. Or you can just leave it as is, and it's a little colder, but it's still performing that same functionality. That's a pretty important concept with single sign-on, is that you can personalize, be recognized as an individual, a platform without ever sharing any personally identifiable information. And that gets back to that same concept of anonymity. Can you make single sign-on as anonymized as IP? Yes, you can. But you're bolstering the security, and as an institution, you might benefit because you might be able to correlate on your back end in your analytics, right? A tool like Open Athens has a whole module where you can visually view all that usage. And that might be really helpful to you to know that Jane Smith is the heaviest user of your library's e-resources, or that she's a aeronautical science major, and that is the busiest department consuming the most content, or anything like that. It depends on the information that you have available and can make available to the system. But with that data, you can start to make more informed decisions rather than just saying, wow, look at all this usage in one big indiscriminate grouping. So again, there's a lot of complexity behind what all of this is doing, and it's our job as providers of all this authentication to make that easier for both your administrators to use and understand, and certainly for end users. Rolling back to some of the earlier concepts that I was mentioning, we've all had those workflows where you're being asked a number of different questions that you don't know the answer to, or you're being prompted too often to enter credentials, and you just say, this is not working. I'm going to go somewhere else that's a little bit easier. It's our job to take all of that away, and it's possible, to make it really simple. Get from point A to point B, but you also have to balance security with that, right? So that's the most difficult aspect of all of this. Take a really complex situation, boil it down and distill it to be something that's really simple, both for the administrator and the end user. And there's lots of flexibility, as mentioned. You can make this as highly configured as the information that you have available permits, or you can make it completely anonymized, and it's just a more secure, in essence, version of something like IP with analytics behind it. Moving forward, again, it's not perfect. None of these protocols are necessarily perfect. They evolve over time and there are many variables, but with those guiding principles, like I just mentioned, I think that as this evolves with all of the feedback from users, end users, and the tools that are available, we can make this increasingly easier. I think a lot of you can also have probably experienced a really easy user journey. Like, wow, think about how you get facial recognition on your phone now, where you can call up an app where you used to have to remember a bunch of different passwords. Now you have something that you don't have to remember. Those can use those, and it's secure. That's the balance of ease of use and security. There's always a concession, but it's increasingly smaller. Not many people have your face, and the margin for error is minuscule with something like that. So those are the type of workflows when I'm referencing that balance that I'm talking about. That saves you time, gets you on to the next thing that's important that you have to do. That's the whole idea, while still maintaining that modicum of security. So with single sign-on, as mentioned, personalization is probably the top benefit and functionality. You may never deploy that in the way that other institutions do. You may have it highly configured, but the flexibility is there. Again, makes the analytical exhaust highly granular if you want it to be, if that's important to you. If not, you don't have to configure it that way. Security, again, SAML as a protocol, never been hacked. OIDC as a protocol, never been hacked. Those are great ways to transmit information. You have transparency. Everyone can see what is happening with each transaction. You can audit it. Tools like OpenAthens and Shibboleth have audit tools where you can see what different users were doing. It doesn't mean that you can see who they were. Again, it could just be that targeted ID, perpetual ID. And then you have identity and access management. So now that you have the granularity of the individual or group, right, that you can route traffic that way, so that you might have content that's applicable only for certain cohorts of your patron population. That might be because it's pertinent to what they're studying. It might be because it's age-related relevant. It might be because geographic limitations, anything like that. As long as you have that information, you can allocate or limit the traffic that goes to that content. It's just something that you really can't do with IP. You can do it with IP proxy to a degree, depending on how much functionality that's built into that. Some services can take groups, for example, that live in an identity provider like Active Directory, and propagate that through to content. A tool like OpenAthens you can create what we call permission sets, and add users and add content to those. So only the folks that are in those sets have the content that's in there. And those sets can be as broad as everyone has access to everything all the time. And it can be as finite as every single patron has a different suite of resources based on their relationship to the institution. Now, I touched on this a few times, but there is complexity behind all of this. And certainly when SAML was introduced in the early 2000s, it was not as user-friendly. It was not as familiar. It was a little clunkier to work with. That has changed, largely due to the efforts of federations and groups like RA21, Resource Access for the 21st Century, Seamless Access, what RA21 evolved into, advocacy groups, and tools like Shibboleth and OpenAthens and Okta and all of the Microsoft iterations. Different access points you may, with single sign-on, you might have the same exact access point that you've always used, right? You may have different ones based on how things are configured and the tools that we're trying to connect, right? Connectivity, that's one of the the chief elements of this. You want to assess how are all the different tools that we need to access configurable. Sometimes it's really easy and highly and highly efficient to get across things. Sometimes not, based on the legacy protocols and the nature of the tools themselves. Generally these days, most everything that we work with can be connected either via straight protocols like SAML and OpenID Connect, or by using what are called APIs or programming interfaces that allow, with a little development either by your institution or by engineers at EBSCO. We have professional services engineers that create connectivity where there was none before. So there's ways to perform that as well. And then linking, because as mentioned, most all of this is predicated on linking, and probably 90+% of, I think, the support calls that we get at EBSCO and at Open Athens are linking related, right? It is a dynamic environment, but generally once that syntax has been created and formatted, and there are wizards to allow you to do that in Open Athens, for example, all you have to know is your target URL. Where do we want to go? That permalink, you enter it in, and Open Athens runs a little mini script and spits out a link for you. And that's what you post in anywhere that your patrons are going to interact with that learning management system, discovery, link resolvers, things of that nature. One of the other cool aspects of what single sign-on does is allow your patrons to go entirely outside of that experience with links and go right to some of your service providers' front pages, and actually have access by querying your identity provider due to how we set that up before when we were configuring these services. And I'll get into that in just a moment. But that brings us to our second question of the day on the polls, and that is federations. How many federations around the world that are based on SAML, since its inception in the early 2000s, do we think there are? Remember, federations by and large are groups of are SAML-based entities that facilitate authentication across all of the different platforms. Most of them are predicated on in academia, although there are some that are outside of that. Open Athens Federation, for example, is one that is worldwide and accepts members of all different disciplines: academic, health, government, special libraries, corporate libraries, etc. Just wait a moment while the answers filter in, and then once we have, again, a quorum, then we'll provide the answers and move ahead. And if I had known, I would have brought some elevator music so we could serenade you while we wait for these to filter in. But let's see.
We'll try to reach at least 50% of the participants. Okay. We are currently 42%. Yes, you can see it, right, Jeff?
Yep. So what I'll do, Bon, I'll move ahead a little bit here. Well, and we can just once the poll completes, because this is relevant. So what federations do, as mentioned, is to standardize that connectivity, right, using SAML, and make it simpler for end users, institutions to connect their patrons to the service provider platforms that need to facilitate those requests. So the goal is simple, right? Simply put, federations exist to improve the way that federated identity works and make it simpler for those entities on both sides to authenticate. Yep. Should you have access to this? Yes. Here you go. Make it easy. because there are some variables, as we talked about. Those attributes or data points about your patrons can be shared in different ways. Some vendors are able to do more with the information that they receive through SAML. Some are able to do less, but yeah, and so good requests. The answers here, so that the heaviest answer was 440. Second answer was 1,225. The actual answer is there are 83 federations around the world, so there aren't a ton. You don't need a lot of these entities to facilitate the work. Generally, there's one per country around the world, and generally they're academic. And then there are some federations that span the entire globe or have a wider reach. But in general, each one of these federations have their own rules, have their own regulations and standards as to how they want to exchange information and what they require. But in general, through a couple of groups that are generally federations of federations, there are two main, Géant, which is from Europe, and then Refeds, and both of those monitor and standardize across the different federations. These are the goals that we have, and this is what we're trying to accomplish through single sign-on, SAML, and OIDC-based app access. So as more and more participants come online with single sign-on, then that allows for these federations to really to have a broader reach and be able to standardize even more completely across the world. So one of the most important points of what they provide is making sure that you, the institution, always have the autonomy to share the information that you are comfortable with. And again, whether that is complete anonymity, all we're sending you is that the perpetual ID or the targeted ID, it's just a string of numbers, or you can send over dozens or more of attributes, first name, last name, etc. And some platforms, some content types like ebooks, for example, you're probably familiar with, actually ask that your patrons be personalized, right? They need that to correlate with whatever the content license is for that type of content, in this case, ebooks. So in many cases, to access content like that, your patrons will be requested to personalize. If you, for example, accessed it using IP Proxy, your patrons might be authenticated. Hey, I'm already in this platform doing my research. Oh, there's a great ebook that looks like something that's gonna be perfect for my project. Go to download it, and then up pops an authentication prompt, and the patron says, huh, I already did this. And you know what? Like, these are different credentials than the ones I just entered. Get frustrated and leave that experience. That is what personalization and single sign-on can eliminate, and certainly aim to eliminate. So I mentioned this before. This would be a user journey that's only supportable with single sign-on, right? Say your patron did not use those formatted links that your librarians spend a lot of time making for them and curating and putting them in all the places that you think they're going to go to do the research, the learning management system, the link resolver, just maybe it's just a custom web page or a content management system that you have, and they go, or maybe they get email. This is very common. Hey, I was on Science Direct and I found this great article for you. Here's the link that the patron just pulled from Elsevier. Emails it to their colleague. And of course, that's not formatted to go through your authentication system. So patron clicks on it, and what happens? They end up at the front page of Science Direct, and then they're like, what do I do now? It's not letting me in like it usually does when I follow my institution's link. You'll notice that there are often places on these pages that say, okay, sign in here, and you click that, and then it will give you a little more guidance. Find your institution, because we've already arranged with, when you set this up, you've already given Elsevier, and Elsevier has given you their metadata. And so that patron can say, oh, I go, you know, I'm a student at the Sorbonne in Paris. I can go and select this right here, right from this drop-down menu. I'll continue. You go through there, and then it's going to say, hey, this seamless access is an industry group that does exactly what it sounds like it does. It makes it easier for patrons to be remembered. But if it weren't seamless access right here, you'd click on this, access through Paris Sorbonne University, and then it would take you to your familiar login page. And now the patron says, oh, awesome, I know these. This is how I log in all the time. And they would enter that and go back and get to whatever content they're looking for. So that's a workflow that single sign-on can facilitate that Proxy or IP Proxy can't, because they don't know who that user is. They can't affiliate them with an institution. So it gives you a little bit of a benefit. So there are, as you're starting to see, building on some benefits to having single sign-on out there. And really key here is that if you notice this highlighted box right here, no login, email, or personal information is stored. What they're keying on is that targeted ID, that alphanumeric string, right? Elsevier may store that information if your patron chooses to give them their name, or you as an institution chooses to give them that information. But what is powering all of this is that alphanumeric. So again, here you can kind of see this right here is an example of that formatted link that I was talking about. This is something that you would go, or we would on your behalf, or otherwise, and you know, you might have easy proxy. This would be a slightly different syntax for what we call your prefix, or prepending this URL, and then you have the URL right here, right? HTTPS, and this is encoded. This designed to work with the Open Athens redirector, but this would be the link right here, basically sciencedirect.com. Patron can click on that, and then if they had been authenticated through your institution, they'd go right. They wouldn't see any of this. But if they don't, this gives them that option, which is nice. It's again, flexibility and reflecting the way that patrons increasingly are getting out to content. You want them to be able to access all of the content that they rightfully should through your institution without having to necessarily get blocked because they didn't use a formatted link. They still should have access to that, and that's what single sign-on facilitates securely. That's the key. So there, as mentioned, there are some advocacy groups that are out there, right? In terms of single sign-on, seamless access is the evolution of a predecessor called RA21, which I mentioned before. Seamless access actually has both consultative aspects to it and some tools that can help facilitate, fill in the gaps of whatever single sign-on applications that you have, so that, you know, on the patron end or on the publisher end, makes it even simpler. But in general, the way that things are configured by your institution, which whatever single sign-on application you utilize, is going to work for you. And also, I mentioned before, the IP addresses and how there can be loose discipline with old IPs still being registered from institutions that have moved on from them, and that can lead to ambiguity, or institutions having access to your content because that's your old IP address and no one ever removed it. The IP registry exists out there to clean all of that up and to create those affiliations. Yes, this is current. We've audited it. This IP address belongs to this institution and this institution only. So there are groups out there that are watching all of this, and they're both nonprofits. They exist to make all of this easier and work more cleanly, as mentioned. That's the goal, to make this easy for administrators at your institutions, to make it easier for your patrons to know what to do when they get there. So in summary, again, it's a brief history. There's a lot of context to it all, and we're happy to go into any detail with any of you that want to follow up. We're going to have a question session right after this, so hopefully you have some questions that we can all answer. But we realize that your institutions exist to make your patrons successful in any ways that we can facilitate that. We're interested in finding out about and helping you. We are active participants in all of these advocacy groups. We give them feedback as a content provider and a provider of authentication. We're in a unique role at EBSCO. We have to support all these protocols, so we know all the trouble that people have and all of the benefits that they get from all of this. We have and we contribute that to all of our publisher partners and all of the authentication providers that are out there, right? EBSCO is a partner with OCLC. We work extensively with Easy Proxy, where we sell and work with Open Athens. So in general, if you have questions around all this, we're happy to help facilitate that, or get you pointed in the right direction, or just generally help you understand how these protocols can benefit you and how you can implement all of that. But we look forward to collaborating with as many of you as we can. I imagine that many of you are already our customers, and if you're in the Philippines, you are blessed because you have a fantastic, really responsive team in Sharebon and Joseph, and they're supported by all of our colleagues here in the United States. So with all that said, we're going to turn it over now to some questions. I'll stop sharing, and I think that we have some time here to do questions, and then after that, as mentioned by Joseph, we're going to have a game, some trivia, some learning, that with some prizes. So stick around for that as well, because who doesn't like prizes?
Yes, there you have it, everyone. Thank you, Jeff, for that very insightful talk. But before we move on to the question and answer, we would like to acknowledge the presence of Christos Kutas. He is the Senior International Business Development Manager of Open Athens. We also had in our webinar, oh, there he is. Hello, Christos. We also had Kyung a while ago, our Senior VP for Sales for Asia, Middle East, and North Africa. We also have Shaji John in our webinar. He is the VP for Sales, South Asia and Southeast Asia. Ching Wei, our Library Services Engineer, and of course, Nawat, our Marketing. All these people helped us make this webinar what it is. And we thank you so much for your presence. It means a lot to our team. And now we will have the open forum. Again, for those who have questions and inquiries about the presentation, please feel free to type them on the Q&A box located at the right-hand side of your screen. Our speaker is ready to answer all of your questions, as well as our panelists. Bon, Joseph, are there any questions in the Q&A box? Maybe you can facilitate now.
Okay, so thanks, Jeff and the team, for a very insightful webinar. We are getting ton of questions in the Q&A, and thanks for Larry and Christos for answering some of them. But we would like as well to highlight some of those questions for the benefit of the other participants. But let me kickstart with this question, and I would like I guess Jeff to answer this question, to highlight more of the security on what SAML is offering, because there's a question here which is, I guess, one of the most concern of librarians here in the Philippines, because still in the Philippines mostly are still traditional libraries. So the comment of the attendee is, the webinar is very interesting and informative. Should my institution be worried that if they give their IP address to a vendor, the chance of hacking may increase, or what is the risk if we gave out our IP? Because most institutions in the Philippines and vendors are asking for IP, because still we are in the IP authentication here in the Philippines. So can you comment on that, Jeff? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, the answer I would feel is conditional. I mean, the short answer is no. I don't think you need to be worried about that, especially with vendors. I mean, we all have, speaking on behalf of that community, we all have an obligation to treat that with the utmost security and seriousness. IP, just the nature of IPs is basically you have it. It is what it is, but in order for that to be hacked, I mean, IP as a protocol basically it is open. I mean, the way that it works is simply by matching one-to-one. Someone could potentially get what they call in the middle of that, a man in the middle attack would be able to see what each click, right? That it's down to that type of granularity, what is happening with that transaction. But vendors these days who facilitate that, everything is secure to the point where it'd have to be someone. I mean, it's a tough question to answer. I mean, I don't think you need to be worried about that. It doesn't frequently happen, but it can happen, and it's much less frequent with a protocol like SAML or OpenID Connect, which are built in and encrypted and designed to fend off exactly those attacks. If you remember what I said earlier on, is that IP was really created at a time when access was important as opposed to authentication. So it's a looser protocol, but I wouldn't be worried about providing that to your vendors. It's again, we all take that with the utmost seriousness, and there's lots of protection in our platforms to ensure that that doesn't happen. But it's not to say that it couldn't.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Actually, it's also an experience for me here in the Philippines that most librarians are, of course, coordinating with their IT department, and their IT department is very much cautious on giving their IPs because of so many, hacking incidents, stealing of personal data, etc. And to add more, that's the good thing about SAML in terms of the security. So, and of course, as Christos mentioned in one of the answers in our Q&A box, that most publishers are really going away from IP authentication due to security reasons. Thanks for that, Jeff. And I will get this a very good question. This was already answered by Larry, and I hope someone like Jeff or Larry could further elaborate the answer on this one. Because in the time of the virtual learning environment during the pandemic here in the Philippines, many institutions had considered having really a learning management system. So the question of the participant is SAML or the SSO that we are talking about here used in LTI integration to an LMS, or are these independent of each other? So any one of you could answer that.
Yeah, Will, are you here? I mean, the answer is no, but we have, if William's on here, he's quite expert with that. I'm happy to pick it up if not.
I am, yes. Hi, Jeff.
Great,
Hi,
thanks.
everyone.
Yep. Hi.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. LTI is essentially a different type of authentication protocol. So when we talk about SAML and single sign-on, that's essentially a second or a different protocol. LTI, like mentioned in the question, is commonly used with LMSs for user experiences or the benefit of, say, for example, a teacher being able to grab some links from an EBSCO database and bring them into your LMS to make it easy for the user to access those articles. Single sign-on is generally for a different experience where you want to send the user to the publisher site directly or into, say, for example, an EBSCO database and do research or a link to an article. So they're both common protocols. They solve different use cases and different needs, depending on your situation. We always recommend to share with us some of those questions or needs or desired experiences you like, and we'd always help to provide some recommendations and thoughts as to what authentication protocol makes the most sense for your task at hand.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Will. That's a very insightful message that you have shared with our participants. Most of the participants here as well, I guess, most librarians have coordinate as well with their LMS administrator with such kind of sharing of course, accessing their library resources. And of course, our team here in EBSCO is also promoting our LTI integration with their EBSCO's database. So I guess that's a very timely question as well. So let me share another thing. So this is a very good question from an attendee. So let me okay. So the question is, so this is in relation with authentication method that can be considered by a consortium of libraries. So is there an authentication? Is there any authentication that is good for a library consortium? And if in case, if Open Athens, if our authentication could do a consortium thing? Thank you.
Yep, there, Larry, do you want to take that one? Mix it up. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I typed briefly in the chat. You could use either. I mean, it's before SAML, it's really up to the user. There are disadvantages, as Jeff pointed out, to IP, and there are advantages to SAML. SAML, as Christos put in the chat as well, is a more secure protocol. And the tools that Open Athens has allows administrators at the consortia level to manage and help their the libraries that they support, with both the service providers and also the connections. So there's tools embedded in Open Athens which has the ability to support SAML and IP resources that require proxy. So I guess it depends on the user and what level of support they want from a solution that is largely based on run on SAML, but can support all types of resources. I know that's not a very targeted answer, but I think it really is up to that user. And I think it's important to have a conversation with with a consultant like us to kind of flesh out what you're trying to accomplish as a consortium leader and how you're supposed to support your people. So it really does depend on the needs and specific challenges you face. I know that sounds very vague, but I think that's important.
I'd add to that too, just to give a little bit of clarity. A tool like Open Athens natively allows for to reflect the hierarchies of a group like a consortium, right? You can have an instance of Open Athens with completely different domains for each one of your consortia members, different institutions, with the consortia at the top of that hierarchy able to jump in and help administrate. We have consortia like that all over the world that have a structure like that. You could have what Open Athens terms a domain group, where it's really just a group in name only, and each domain is completely their own proprietary instance. No one can get in there but the members of the own domain. So just building on what Larry said, one of the first things that we would do is determine the needs of the consortium. Are you a buying group that's just assembling all of this and you can be in the same domain group with, again, name only? Or does your consortium have a much more active role where the members of the consortium are actually in helping the individual institutions and able to go in and perform all the administrative functions like working with accounts and creating permission sets and allocating resources, things of that nature. And Open Athens is great for that. One of the best tools that we have seen for that expansion. And again, it can grow as your consortium grows. If you start with just a few members and you want to keep adding to it, that is one of the strong suits of the application. And Christos, if there's anything that I missed in that one too that you want to add, please feel free to jump in, because I think it's an important concept to make clear.
No, I agree with you, Jeff, exactly to the point. We can help with that kind of hierarchy. Just another point I would want to make is, if librarians and in consortia are thinking about authentication, I'm guessing that they will think in terms of investment, in terms of the future of authentication as well, having a system that works now, but also 3 years down the line, and having the support. So that means scalability as well. So these are important issues. So I would advise people to look into the federated authentication ensemble, in a sense that, if publishers going away from IP, you would want a system that uses federated authentication, but also IP as well, as you mentioned, Jeff. So that's one aspect. And then support is very important. That's one of the reasons that we partner with EBSCO, because the scalability and the support is there. We're talking about a consortia that has 50 libraries or 100 libraries or 200 libraries. You need to be aware of a solution that can offer the support, because as Jeff mentioned, some can be a bit complex at times. So you need to have the people in place to help you out with anything that you need. But yeah, as a term of investment, you might want to look into the federated authentication space, so that you don't have to worry about where the technology goes in 3 years' time. That's if I was a librarian, that would be my major concern, because there are lots of solutions out there that work at this moment. But I was looking at a webinar from Elsevier the other day, and they were talking about doing a pilot to investigate what it would take for them to move to authentication, federated authentication only. So if something like that happens, let's say in a year from now, that means any library that has enabled IP recognition, they're not going to have access to Elsevier. When that will happen, we don't know. But the data shows that lots of publishers nowadays are looking into these kind of pilots. So if I was a librarian, I would want to have a system that works now and in the future. That would be my major concern, apart from everything else. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Oh yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your insight, Christos, Jeff, and Larry. I guess that because that librarian is a member of a particular consortium, maybe we could try to arrange an initial meeting with them if they are really interested on that one. So we will further understand the need for authentication among those member of the consortium of the libraries. So there's a good question here. I hope anyone can answer. This is a very specific question targeted to a specific type of library, which is, I guess, a school library. So this is in the chat box. So are there authentication methods that are in a way specific to a school population? So they are identifying like a school library, which is a relatively small, comparing with the university with a much bigger population. So can you comment on this one? Thank you.
You bet. Hey, William, do you want to grab that one? Or I'm happy to as well. So,
yeah, Jeff, if you don't mind.
Yep, not at all. So sure, it's fairly common for schools to use a simpler system of authentication like IP, sometimes IP proxy. LTI comes into play a lot actually with our schools, because schools don't often have the expertise or access to the expertise, the financial backing that your typical universities have, things of that nature. However, there are many different protocols that are available for use for schools. We have implemented Open Athens single sign-on across many schools, which is nice because the making access easier for patrons is probably there's no group that's it's more important for than younger students who really don't have the inclination to try to understand why am I being asked to authenticate a bunch of different ways to all these resources. So again, for them, the easier you can make it, a single set of credentials entered once, maybe at the beginning of their user journey, is even that much more important. But yeah, I would say there are some barriers to schools that schools have that sometimes that universities or larger institutions don't have, and that's where I think that your local representatives, Bond, Cher, and Joseph, can really provide you with some guidance about what would be best. But we certainly have many schools around the world that utilize single sign-on, and it has simplified that user journey like we talked about for those students, and that is vital. You don't have a lot of time when you're a teacher to go around and help everybody troubleshoot to actually get into the content. You want that to be the easiest part, and then you can provide your teaching. But each instance is a little bit different and proprietary, but I'd say, yeah, I'd revert to what I said before. Bond, Cher, and Joseph will give you the best advice right there. And I know, speaking from an EBSCO perspective, we support just about any way you could access all of that. But we, as Christos was saying, we believe in single sign-on now and for the future for its scalability, and because we know that whether it's SAML or OpenID Connect or what have you, it's going to be around as time moves forward.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. You are really right on the part of the school libraries that they are managing like few resources for students or maybe for the teachers, and they are thinking on how valuable will be investing on an authentication scheme for early learners, like of course in grade school and even for the middle school. But thanks for that insight, and thank you Teacher Van for that question, and
Yeah,
thanks for
great question.
appreciating the answer. Another question is, this is I think directed for us. So there is a question here from a librarian. Is that our company EBSCO, are we using this kind of authentication, or maybe this is Open Athens
Well,
for the company, I think. Yeah.
Oh, do we at EBSCO use Open Athens? Yes, we do. We use Open Athens for our own employees to access our own internal documentation for single sign-on. It facilitates a lot of our document stores, our repositories that we utilize. I hope that's the spirit of the question, but yeah, we use it as much as we can, and we use single sign-on just about everywhere. EBSCO is reflective of a lot of institutions where you might have what we call an enterprise single sign-on. So a tool like Microsoft Active Directory that powers, it's the database for all the thousands of people that work at EBSCO, and it powers all kinds of applications. And then you're easily able to plug a tool like Open Athens in. It will reference all that information that's in Active Directory. So you only have to manage that once with your IT department, and then you can use all of the native functionality of Open Athens to route the traffic the way it should be. I might have different access as a sales person as some of my colleagues in marketing or my developers, colleagues, or otherwise. So it's a great tool for that, but really that's more a function of single sign-on. Open Athens is just the interface that makes it really easy to configure.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And we could attest to that because we are using Open Athens on a daily basis to log in to different work applications, like of course, our other, like our learning system, like in Success Factors and all throughout. Anyway, thanks for that, Jeff. There's a quick question here. So, this particular library has an existing directory like I think it's LDAP or in Google directory. So how can Open Athens support this directories?
Very easily. Those are two protocols. Ldap, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about Ldap. Ldap stands for Light Directory Active Protocol. It's not proprietary to Microsoft Active Directory, but it was designed, it's really where you find it the most. It's a legacy protocol. It's not as ubiquitous, or it doesn't allow for the widespread connectivity that subsequent protocols like SAML and OpenID Connect allow for true single sign-on. We really consider LDAP same sign-on. You might be asked to authenticate a few different times based on the tools you configure, but it's always going to be the same credentials. So at least it's not different that way. But we can use it. LDAP is quite common as an identity provider for Open Athens still, and then Google uses SAML, so easy. That if we have a live demonstration for you, maybe the local team will show you. It's as simple generally as Open Athens ingesting what we call a metadata URL, a link that we'll put in. That link will lead to a web page that has the true metadata, all the information that needs to go in there. It takes 10 minutes, no exaggeration, if we don't run into any hurdles, which we usually don't. LDAP's a little bit more complex, few more parameters, but those are both very common identity, what we call identity providers or directories for Open Athens.
Okay, thanks Jeff for that one. We will still try to entertain maybe 2 to 3 more questions in the interest of time. Let me ask this question. So if the other question is they have already an existing directory. So this question is they do not have a current user directory. So can you, if let's say they are considering Open Athens, so can they use Open Athens as their user repository? And another follow-up question is that how many online resources do we need to have if we are considering Open Athens? Thank you.
Sure, Larry, you want to take that one to mix it up a little bit?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Oh, the question was, the first part of the question was, I'm sorry, Bon, could you repeat that again?
Okay, the first part of the question is they don't have an existing user
yeah.
directory, and if they are considering Open Athens, can they use Open Athens as their user repository? Then the follow-up question is that how many online resources do they need if they are considering Open Athens as a form of authentication? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, so Open Athens can be used as your directory. So you can bulk upload user records in a CSV file into the system. As far as how many resources you would need, the system can handle as many as you have. It's just a matter of, do you want a tool like Open Athens to help you manage your users and also your permission sets and all your resources. So I guess it comes down to how we can definitely, if you don't have an active directory, Open Athens can serve as that. We can upload that for you, and you can add users on the fly. It's not a static system. So the second part, as far as resources, is as few as you have or as many as you have. That doesn't really matter as much.
It's very common for institutions to have both an external directory and have some accounts in Open Athens itself for more transient members of your community, or maybe you have your active students in a directory that's external, and you enter your alumni or something like that into Open Athens. So it's really flexible in terms of identity, and that's, I don't know if it's unique, but it's rare, and Open Athens is one of the only tools we work with that allows you to do that, actually serve as an identity provider and reference another directory that's out there. So you have, again, flexibility is what single sign-on is all about, and Open Athens does a really good job of that.
Yeah, indeed. And good thing for those libraries here, especially for our institutions that have no user directory as of this moment. If you're considering Open Athens, we could talk about on how this authentication solution will be helpful for you, because I think the main concern is that but here in the Philippines we are already moving to face-to-face classes already, but there are still institutions that have already done like online distance learning and at the same time virtual learning environment. So I guess this could be a good thing for libraries to consider some authentication even without a current user directory. So I have another question here about usage, because most librarians here in the Philippines justify of course renewal of their databases or purchases for with the usage of such resources, as of course as a return of investment. So how can Open Athens or does Open Athens track usage with anonymity with regards to these databases? That's the question.
Yeah, it does. So Open Athens will allow a librarian to be able to see not only the content, like service providers like EBSCO, ProQuest, Elsevier, but also the different apps that you have connected into it. So you can really get a full picture of the library ecosystem and how it's being used. I will say anonymity obviously being important. You don't have to pass over any personal identifiable information from an Active Directory to authenticate in. So a librarian could have insight into what departments, be it a history department or physics department, chemistry, whatever it might be. They can see the usage of the different publishers that they purchase content from and be able to make those decisions that you alluded to that are so important around budget. So you do get a lot of deep insight, very granular insight into who in your entire library, in your university, in your college is using the system. And it can be done also at the student level by major. If that's an attribute that you can pass over, we can see what departments, what majors rather are using which content. So you'll have an added level of visibility into what is being used. And again, I will say it is at the publisher level. So you won't be able to see the different journals within Elsevier. You get to see Elsevier as a platform, the collective usage of all Elsevier content. So that's important. You can use your associated counter reports that you have from your publishers to get more detailed insight. But librarians do love the fact that they can rely on Open Athens to give them that insight, especially around budgeting time, or also staffing too. We've heard this recently, and then this is important with budgets for staffing in a library. You can see when people are authenticating into to use the library, what times of day, so you can appropriately have folks monitoring if you use online chat to support your patrons or researchers, or just general staffing in the library. So it can serve to help both with managing your staff and also managing your budget. So lots of areas for you to gain insight into how the library is being used.
Okay, thanks,
Larry.
Yeah, okay, Crystal, go.
If I may add
Sure, yeah.
about anonymity, yeah, we can go as granular as the library wants us to be, and not reveal any sensitive information. We have some customers that want exactly that. They want to see usage per user, but they don't want to pass to Open Athens, sensitive information. That's easy to do. We can report on, student number, staff number, something that we don't know who these guys are, but the library does. And the beauty of SAML is all about the attributes. So we can report or any attribute that the library can pass to us. So it's the reporting module that we have can be, as granular, and the libraries can be as creative as they want to be. The system allows them to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Christos, for that. And for our dear librarians here, what Christos is mentioning, if you have a current user directory, whatever attributes that will be passed on to Open Athens in terms of the granular user statistics or usage statistics, that will be generated via Open Athens. So rest assured that as long as you have granular attributes in your user directory, we could have a more specific and more detailed usage statistics for every resources that you have in the library. So I'll be just getting, okay.
One last, to add to one, granular statistic means that what your name, the college that you belong to, if you're from College of Medicine, or if you're a faculty or a student, that's the granular statistics that we are referring to. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. So we'll, in the interest of time, we'll be just taking these two questions. Then we'll be proceeding. I think we have still solid 832 participants. I think they are very much excited with our quiz. But let me just take these two questions. So there's a question here. I think we have mentioned something about federation, and what if their current subscription or to a publisher is not a member of a federation? Can Open Athens still use to authenticate such database or such publisher?
Yeah, I can take that if morning.
Sure.
The Open Athens can work with thousands of publishers. So we have three kind of publisher groups, if I may say. So one group support federated authentication and SAML. So we can work with these publishers. They are in our Open Athens Federation. That's not a problem. Then you have a second group that they support SAML. They have some SAML capabilities, but they don't belong to any federation. Again, Open Athens can work with those publishers, and we can do what we call a bilateral collection and one-to-one connection. And then the rest of the publishers that support IP, again, we have a managed proxy service. And the idea behind that is that ideally we want everybody to use federated authentication, but the reality is that lots of publishers still don't have the expertise, so they still use IP. So we manage that, proxy service so that libraries don't have to worry about, oh, am I gonna have to have another system to connect with these publishers? We don't want libraries to have 2 and 3 systems. We want to use Open Athens for pretty much everything for ease of use and peace of mind. Jeff, did I sum up correctly, or I confused things more?
No, perfect. No, I think it's very clear. Thanks, Christos.
Yeah, because here in the Philippines, in our team's experience, there are some databases that are currently subscribed by different libraries, and that of course that is not part of the federation. Most of them are the local databases that are being subscribed, which are only found, of course, and published here in the Philippines. And it's good thing that Open Athens can still help on that one. But rest assured that most of the publishers that you are subscribing to, as long as they member of the federated, can be authenticated or integrated with Open Athens. And thanks for that insight. And the last question would be, so I guess this is a very good question in terms of library operations, in terms of the authenticating library resources. So the question is, our library website is not available 24/7. We are off during midnight to 8 a.m. So how can our users access our resources during hours when our website is not accessible if we are to use Open Athens? So any one of you can answer.
I can, that's easy. I think that the solution could be My Athens Plus, our library web portal. So we offer a light touch library web portal that the library can control. So that means that they can play around, they can create panels, they can put videos there, all kind of information. And that library web portal has all the list of the resources, and that's accessible 24/7. Now, we hear from some customers around the world that, especially when they are concerned about security as well, and they have their library web portal, they say exactly the same thing. What if something happens and my library web portal is not available, it's not accessible? Because that's a communication tool with the end users, with the students. So lots of libraries use My Athens Plus as a backup or as the main library portal. And we can do a demo and we can show you how that looks like and how easy it is for the library actually to change things, to set up things and configure things in My Athens Plus.
Okay, thanks, Christos, for that insight. And of course, if there are also libraries here that don't have because some libraries here in the Philippines for the team that they have number one, they don't have a library website. Second thing is sometimes there is just a link in their university website, just have the policies of the library, something like that. And what Christos is mentioning, that My Athens Plus can also be like a form of your library website or library authentication for your existing resources. So if you want to have more information on that one, so please let us know. And I would just like to ask permission from Jeff, because some participants are asking if they could have the copy of your presentation. Would that be fine?
Absolutely, happy to share.
Okay,
If
okay.
you want, Bon, you have the copy. You can
Yeah.
send to anybody. Yeah, that's no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, okay. So for
We're
those
honored.
participants, yeah, for those participants asking for that, so we will be sending, of course, the presentation of Jeff, and at the same time your e-certificates and a link to the webinar recording in your email, as long as you have fulfilled all of the requirements of the digital certificates as well. And again, I would like to thank, of course, Jeff, Christos, Larry, William, and our team here for this very informative and timely session for Librarian. And before we proceed to of course the exciting part of this webinar series, any maybe last message for our participants, Jeff, Christos, Larry, or William, before we proceed to the game proper?
I would just like to thank everybody. I know we have a many people on this webinar, and it's an early morning. We appreciate your spending the time to talk with us about authentication. Hopefully we conveyed some good information, maybe spurred some curiosity. And I would, as I mentioned before, you have a phenomenal team in the Philippines, very responsive, and take advantage of their knowledge. They're happy to either provide that or they know where to go amongst their colleagues to get you definitive answers that'll help you and your patrons ultimately be more successful. And that's what we're here for.
Okay, so thank you everyone. And again, I understand that we still have a ton of questions in Q&A and some are there in the chat box. So please feel free to still send your questions in our evaluation form. So you have a link, of course, a portion there where you could ask as many questions as you can, and we'll try to answer that in email, and we'll coordinate with our speakers here. Again, thank you very much to Jeff, Christos, Larry, William, and our team here who are here as a panelist po. And I'll give now back the floor to share. Thank you.
Okay, again, thank you very much to our speakers. Very, very informative, really, not just the talk, but also the Q&A part. Thank you. Okay, and now for our team's most awaited part of this webinar. Are you all ready? It is game time. Okay, so we need your mobile device with this. We will give you the game mechanics. Are you ready with the game mechanics, Bon? Okay, again, it's game time. To play the game, click the provided link in the Zoom chat box. It will be shared by Joseph. Kindly look at the chat box. We are 827 strong, so we know that we will be having a lot of participants in this game, but this is the most important part. For you to win, you have to put your first and last name and then your affiliated institution initials or name. It can be the whole name. So example, Juan de la Cruz Harvard University. Okay, wow. We will have 2 minutes to register, and our favorite part, we will give prizes. Our first prize will be 1,500 pesos. Second prize will be 1,000 pesos. And third prize will be 500 pesos. So please prepare your mobile gadgets and register now. Prizes will be sent through your GCash accounts only. This game is about speed and accuracy. So you have to know the correct answer, but at the same time, tap in your answer in your mobile device the quickest possible. That will make you have higher points if that's the case. So we wish everyone good luck. Joseph, did you already share the code?
Yes, I've already shared the code. So we
Okay.
have currently 200 plus participants in the game.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Okay,
the game
so-
code is 030870. That is the game code in your URL. Please type the game code is there, and also the URL quizzes.com.
If they click on the link, they'll be able to join directly.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Are you
Joseph will be
sharing?
sharing your screen. Yes.
Yes, okay, I'll share my screen
Yes.
now.
Okay, please, Christos, Jeff, Larry, and William. Also, Chingwei and Awat, please don't go yet. We want to share with you how we do games here in the Philippines. So stay tuned as well.
And any one of the panelists is not eligible to win the prize. And for
Yeah.
those who are in the call that are related to EBSCO, you are not also eligible to win the prize, even if you win. Okay.
Yes, again, that's 1,500 for the first place, 1,000 for the second place, and 500 for the second place. So saan ka pa? Nag-webinar na? May pag-game pa.
May natutunan ka pa, di ba?
Yes, correct.
So
Okay,
I think we need to start now because we only have 4 more minutes to.
Yes, we promised to end at 11:30, so we really have to maybe half 400 there. We have 403 participants who are joined in the game.
412. Okay, so
Yeah,
we
I
can
think
start
we
now.
could start now. Thank you.
Okay, everyone ready? Mobile devices and quick fingers. Let's go. For the first question, how old is the modern internet? Go. These, the options are in your mobile device, so you have to click the answer in your mobile gadgets. Time's up. And the answer is 39. And we have Sir Dennis.
Yeah, Sir Dennis, go.
Okay, can I just give a brief explanation on why it is 39? The ARPANET, the predecessor of the internet, was born in November 1969, making the internet 53 years old. In January 1983, ARPANET shifted to the TCP or IP protocol, which to date powers the modern internet, which makes the modern internet, which is the question, 39 years old. Okay, next question, please.
So habol lang po, makakahabol po
Oo.
kayo niyan.
What
As long as
first
you got that.
question pa lang.
Yes.
Okay, so for the second question, how old is internet protocol? Time's up, and the answer is leaderboard first. Let's see if it has changed. No, it's still Sir Dennis going strong. The answer is 48. IP was introduced by Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn in 1974. So IP is now 48 years old. Next question, please. What are the benefits to IP or IP proxy services?
Oh, Sir
Oh.
Dennis going strong.
The answer is all of the above. Next question.
Parang yung nag-change 2 and 3 lang, no? Si Sir Dennis number 1.
Correct. What does SAML stand for? Time's up. The answer is Security Assertion Markup Language. Oh, ang strong ni Sir Dennis, ha? Okay, next question, please. What are the benefits of SAML or SSO? The answer is all of the above. Security, personalization, and high granular statistics. All of the above. What is the latest SSO protocol? This is our 6th question. Habol pa sa mga iba.
Oh, grabe si Sir Dennis. Number 1 pa din.
Miss
Galing.
Janice, hello. The answer is OpenID Connect. Next question. How many SAML-based federation are there in the world today? This was asked also in the poll, I think. Oh, clue. That's a clue.
Yes.
If you were listening, dapat nakuha niyo to. Let's see. The answer is 83. Oh, yes, 83. There you go. Next question. This is an easy one. What are the names of our expert speakers today? So we introduced 3. They are also part of the panelists. So what are their names? Time's up.
Second to the last na to, no? It's 8 of 9.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Habol. Ang galing talaga ni Sir Dennis. Number 1 pa din.
Of course, the answer, William, Larry, and Jeff. Yung mga iba panggulo, Larry, Mo, and Curly. But of course, William, Larry, and Jeff, again, thank you for this webinar. And now the last question, and I guess one of the most important questions in this quiz. Okay, pabilisan. Very, very easy question. Who should you call for Open Athens inquiry? Who should you call? Time's up. If you didn't get this, nako, you should always know that you can call Bon, Joseph, and myself anytime if you have questions on Open Athens. Oh,
Wow, si Ma'am
see?
Isa, number 3.
Aba, may
Meron-
tatawag sa Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
Tito Vic and Joey and the Avengers meron. But of course, you can always reach Joseph, Bon, and myself anytime if you have questions on Open Athens. And now for the winner, I think that's the last question. I'll take a screenshot as proof of our winners for today. Oh, still uploading.
Apologies, we had 400 plus participants, so medyo mabagal. It's a bit of a delay.
Ayan.
We'll be contacting them and we'll be asking for
Wow, Sir
how do you
Dennis
get,
from Isa.
How do we
Okay.
get the? Sure, go ahead.
Yes, okay. If your names are here on the board, we would very much appreciate if you can send a private message here in Zoom to Bon. Please give your GCash number so that we can send to you your prizes. Congratulations, Sir Dennis Maldes. Is this Mr. or Miss Josh? Josh and Carissa Volante.
Eh, Ma'am Isa, UP
Congratulations.
Manila.
Okay. Congratulations. Okay, so uh-huh. Again, as mentioned, we request that you send a private chat message to Bon here in Zoom with your name, institution, and GCash account number. Congratulations. And now for some announcements. Okay, a lot of people have sent a question regarding this if we had an attendance link or an evaluation link. So here it is. We will issue again digital certificates for all of the participants here in Zoom, but we have some requirements. So here they are. The first one is that you should have registered and attended the webinar via Zoom. You should have accomplished the webinar evaluation form. We have here a QR code. Please take a photo or screenshot of the QR code. You can also click on the link that was shared in the chat box by Bon. And also, once the meeting has ended, our webinar, you will be redirected to the webinar link. The link will be open on, the link will be closed on October 7. So tomorrow, 11:59 p.m. If you send your evaluation or if you click the link after the time, it will not be counted anymore. So please do the evaluation form as soon as possible so that you will receive your digital certificate via email. Certificates, the webinar recording link, and the slides of Jeff will be emailed to your registered email address that you used when you registered in this webinar, but please give us a minimum of 2 weeks after the webinar. We have a lot of participants, 800 plus, so it will take a while for us to send it, but promise minimum of 2 weeks, we will send the certificates to you. Also, this webinar, the webinar recording will be posted in our EBSCO Southeast Asia Facebook page. So if you have not liked or visited our EBSCO Southeast Facebook page, please do. We would like you to know more information or the latest on EBSCO. Please just visit our Facebook page and click like. It is EBSCO Southeast Asia. Okay, is that the last of our slides, Bon? I think it is. Yes, thank you again, everyone, for attending our webinar. On behalf of our EBSCO Philippine team, Joseph, Bon, and myself, your moderator, Sure, together with our speakers, Jeff, William, Larry, and of course, our marketing team, Nawat and Ethan, who also helped us. We would like to thank all of the attendees for attending our webinar and for spending your morning with us. Please stay safe. Yes, also Christos. Sorry, I forgot to mention. Also Christos, please stay safe and healthy. Please have a blessed Thursday. Again, everyone, thank you very much. Maybe we can request for a photo.
Yes,
Can we
for the
ask
panelists,
everyone to turn on your video? Hi, Nawat. Jingwei, are you okay to turn on your video? We'll take a photo. Maybe not ready. Okay, ready. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And for those winners with our EBSCO game, so please send us your GCash account number so we could send your prizes. Anyway, it's Sir Dennis, it's Ma'am Joanna Shapno, and Ma'am Isa Volante. I think they are our customers, so we could send in immediately.
Jingwei, there you are. We'll take another photo. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Smile, everyone. 1, 2, 3. All right. Again, thank you so much, Jeff. Such an informative talk. Thank you,
Thanks,
Larry,
everyone.
Bon, I
Christos,
think
for
we can
answering.
enter a mock session. Or
Yeah, guys.
I wait. Let me check if I'll just stop recording.